For being here. My name is Katie Linendahl. I am honored to be able to moderate this event. I personally have watched Dave's film Mourning Son and Todd's as well 3 times now. It's a very intense film. Has anybody seen it? Oh, wow. Awesome. For those of you that don't know and have not seen the film that we're focused on tonight, Mourning Son, his mom was murdered at the age of 15, and that murderer was on the loose for over 7 years. So you can imagine the impact that one day in Dave's life had throughout his entire life. So without further ado, let me bring Dave and Todd on stage.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks for coming out, everybody. Katie, you just gave away the end of the film. For those of you who didn't know, I'm sorry. My mom does die at the end of this film. Thanks, Katie.
It's in the
she
synopsis,
dies at kind of
dude.
the beginning.
Way to go.
It's in the synopsis.
All
Cut me
right,
some
fair
slack.
enough, fair enough.
I feel like with that said, since I have already ruined it, should we head right to the trailer? To give
Sure,
everybody
whatever
a
you want to
sense
do.
of-
First of all, I want to say, super stunned that you all came out. Thank you very, very much for the support. It means a lot to us and our little film. So really, really great to see you all. Thank you.
Yeah, you can give yourself a round of applause. All right, so let's head right on over to the trailer. Again, this is Mourning Son. This is Dave, executive produced, Todd obviously directed, and their first foray into documentary filmmaking. Let's do it. Such an amazing film. And you know, you say how on one day everything changed, and certainly to be able to tackle a project of that nature. But really, I want to start with the relationship you guys have too, because you know how messy it can be when you're working with friends and you're involving others that you actually care about. Todd, for you to tackle a project of this magnitude with Dave, a lot at stake here, a lot could go wrong.
Yeah, it certainly. Yeah, it was a little bit of like, we didn't even think of that. We just dove into, let's try and do this. And because we had complete control over the entire film, as far as we funded it, it was just us that made this thing, you know, with help from some technical people towards the end of the film. But since we had control, there was, at any time I could just say, or he could just say, this is too much. Let's stop this, or let's shelf this, or let's not continue down this path.
And as you say that, I see you perk up in the sense that having that control was probably imperative in creating this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is that Todd and I are cinephiles. We love film. I mean, that's my all-time favorite thing. And I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. We've always wanted to make films, and we've wanted to make them together. And what we actually wanted to do was just try filmmaking. And we were on the phone one night and said, let's make a movie. Well, what should it be? Should it be a thriller? Should it be a crime story? Should it be a documentary? And I was like, hey, you know, hold the phone. I got a story. And we just kind of undertook the story. We looked at each other and said, yeah, let's do that. And so it became a passion project among friends, and we didn't have any outside help. I mean, we not only didn't have funding or a studio or management or an agent or any of those things or cameramen, we just literally got into a car with a camcorder and started making a movie. And we learned how to make a movie that way.
You actually decide 30 years later to go to San Quentin and visit the guy who murdered his mom. And I think halfway on the trip, correct me if I'm wrong, you start to realize...
It was on the way back. On the way back, we're just like, that's why they have groups that arrange these things. So, you know, not to open up old wounds and re-traumatize yourself, which I did.
Well, and Todd, I feel like for the first, bad or good, Todd finally like kind of loses it. He's like, I don't know if this was a good idea.
Yeah, that was
This is that
genuine,
line
yeah.
of friendship professionalism.
Well, yeah, exactly. And, you know, you're thinking, or I'm thinking as a director, to tell the story, the storytelling part of this whole thing. And then we get there, and I think, was this the most detrimental thing I've ever done to my friend? And then he metaphorically, did I just put a gun in his hand?
And then he thought, fuck it, I need to make my movie. Let him go in there.
What is going through your head? It sounds like such a an easy question, like a softball, but honestly, you're seeing this guy who's aged so many years and so much time has gone by, and what are you hoping to achieve from this face-to-face meeting with him?
That's an interesting question. I didn't know what to expect. I knew to not have expectations. I knew to not expect an apology. I knew to not expect to let bygones be bygones, and I didn't want it to be an angry exchange. I wanted to walk in and walk out and leave him there as like a symbol of empowerment, as some kind of metaphorical, physical act that I can take to walk through fear, you know, and I got just that. And I think that one of the things that was really important for me is to not walk into it angry and rageful, because then I'm setting the tone for myself, and that could re-trigger trauma. And I think that what I'm talking about in this film, more than anything else, is trauma and learning how to live and cope and deal with trauma, which is one of the reasons why we focus on the drug addiction stuff, which is a path that I took to try and find some kind of peace, or sex addiction, or you know, the diving into artistic ventures, which, you know, are not all detrimental, but, you know, different ways of trying to cope, until I learned that it was really about the physical action of walking through something that's super scary and being empowered by that. And I think that's what I was looking for. So fortunately, I didn't have a head full of rage and anger, and I just went in there open to the experience and seeing what it was going to be.
I recall one of your lines in your film. You're wondering why you don't just lunge over at this guy.
Well, yeah, the filmmaker in me wanted a dramatic moment like that, you know? But the reality is, if I had, I would have a different experience, because there was something about walking out of there and being like, you know what? I have my life, and this guy's in place where he deserves to be. And one of the things that victims of violent crime we rarely see is a punishment being carried out. You know, they take a guy off to prison and that's it, and you go on with your life and try and deal. But to go actually walk into the prison and be in the environment and see, like, wow, this is this guy's life now, you know? There's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for learning what the punishment, the consequence has become. And so that was a valuable thing for me.
I think one of the most interesting things I've ever learned about you is having gone through this experience and been so traumatic, but then at the same time, he has a lot of art from serial killers.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Which is so mind-numbing to me, and I can't understand and close that loop of...
These pieces that I have are very juxtaposed. I mean, they're the most frightening minds in the world doing what appears to be very childlike, animated, colorful, bubbly paintings. You know, in a lot of cases, you're looking at I think the Richard Ramirez is Bambi, the John Wayne Gacy is a clown, Pogo the Clown, and these are very counter to what you would think a mind of a serial killer would creatively come up with. And they're almost childlike and infantile, and I'm fascinated with that juxtaposition and that psychology.
Can I ask you an intense personal question?
Oh, now? You're
Yes.
going to start with the intense ones?
Yes.
Okay.
If Riccardi, the killer, would have started painting,
Yeah, no. Yeah.
I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah, no.
Because you have such a different mindset in the way you approach things. You're always full of surprises.
Yeah, I don't think there's any... This is a guy, you know, and listen, this is a weird line for me to walk, you know, like fascination with serial killers and then being the victim of a violent crime, and how do you make peace with that? Well, these are psychologies that I find fascinating because of the same reason probably thousands and thousands of people do. In my case, this is a guy who, all of us, everybody in this room has gone through heartache and loss, one way or another. A girlfriend or a boyfriend dumps you, someone doesn't want to be with you, whatever the case is, right? For the most part. This is one human being who couldn't handle that, couldn't man up, couldn't deal with life on life's terms the way everybody else here does and has to. And so he killed two beautiful women because he couldn't take no for an answer, which is, in my opinion, not fascinating, not interesting, not juxtaposed in some weird artistic way, And so it's very easy for me to make that distinction.
You also made note, not only was his mother murdered, but not by blood, but really close with the family. Your aunt was
Yes.
also, and you're very sensitive to really keep her out of the story, just due to privacy, which I thought was really well done.
I became an entertainer in my life, and I do this in my book as well. So I've chosen to expose certain elements of my life, and that's just the choice I made. But other members of my family haven't made that choice. And so I respect that, and I'm not going to expose their lives because I'm exposing mine. So I do have to be protective of my extended family.
Yay for you facing your fears.
Truly is. Thank you for being such an open and honest story and allowing me to also moderate this. It's been an absolute honor. My friend came over the other night, who's actually here, and he cried 3 times during the film. And it was just so touching and honest, and appreciated that you put this story out there.
Thanks, Katie. One of the things that we wanted to do is in 1983 when this happened, there weren't a lot of outreach programs for domestic violence, and there was no internet, and there weren't places for my mom to go and seek help. That wasn't as on the forefront of our tongues as it is now. So I wanted to tell a cautionary tale because I know so many people that are in horrible relationships, and I just want them to know, you know what, man, things can go bad really fast, unexpectedly. Be aware of that. And if you're in one of those situations, or you have a friend who's in one of those situations, find help. It's out there. We work with Safe Horizon. We work with nomore.org. So there are places that, help can be found. And I also wanted victims of crime and of domestic violence to not feel alone, because there can be a very isolating shame that goes along with being in an environment like that and having not done anything about it. So I wanted to share with them as well. And I also wanted to make a movie that was interesting to watch.
Before we get to audience questions, Todd, one last question for you. What are you guys working on now? Do you continue the relationship? Does Spread Entertainment with Todd and Dave move on to the next big project, and what is that?
Absolutely. One of the things that he had stated earlier is okay, we've worked together in a lot of mediums. We have a radio show that we've done together. We've done a lot of projects together, and filmmaking was always the goal. So when he said oh, let's make a movie, let's do this, it was to continue to do so. So yeah, we're launching a production company. We have a lot of scripted projects, stuff that I've written, stuff that we're looking for other filmmakers to do too. So yeah, we're
When you've been writing for
it.
years, 20-some years before moving out to LA, correct? And a number of different mediums, from children's animation to horror to, again, I noted earlier, Married with Children. So amazing to be able to work in a friend environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we're here to do.
Shall we take some questions from the audience?
During the time you were playing with Jane's Addiction, he was on the run, hunted by America's Most Wanted and the FBI. Was that on your mind and affecting your decisions to use, and what were you thinking at that?
It's interesting because it was a really uncertain time. Of course, the killer was on the run. I was on tour, and when you're talking about someone who's as insane as the guy who's going to kill 2 women, right? You don't know, are they going to go kill the rest of my family? Are they going to try and find me? I'm listed in the local papers as to where I'm going to be at what time because I'm playing. So that was a little terrifying. But as far as the drug use and using drugs, and I try and get into this, I used it as an excuse to get high, without a doubt. I don't think that one indicated the other, because there's millions of victims out there who don't become drug addicts. You know what I mean? And I would hate to do them a disservice by saying, yeah, and it caused me to do drugs, because that's not what I'm saying. But I certainly had an excuse. Say, you don't understand, man. I got this guy's after us. And then, I can get away with whatever the fuck I want.
He also brought up a really good point. We didn't even discuss America's Most Wanted.
Yeah.
Key and integral in this process. And they had initially came to you and you weren't on board.
No. I was really, America's Most Wanted came to us. They wanted to do our story, cover it. And I was like, man, they're trying to sensationalize this really horrible tragedy. You know, how little did I know that years later I would. But, you know, but TV being what it was back then, and I guess what it is, you know, they're like, okay, we don't have the family's consent, but we're going to do this anyway. And we were a little offended by it. And wouldn't you know it, that program was a vital role in catching this killer. And I've since gone, I've been on the show and I've become friends with John Walsh, and it, you know, meant the world to me.
Dave, how has your life changed since releasing the movie? And Todd, what was the most challenging aspect of the project over the past 7 years? And by the way, love your shoes.
Thank you.
Oh, aren't they the best? Todd, do you want to handle that first?
Oh God, there were so many different rides that I had to go on. But I think one of the most challenging parts, believe it or not, was releasing the movie.
Yes.
Because, like he had said many times, we had total control. When you release it, you give up that control. Now it's out there, public is consuming it, they're seeing it, they're making opinions, you know, things like that. And I think that twisted you too as well, just because of the, you know, the open book that he's giving the world, the opportunity to see this very private part.
Going to San Quentin to see this guy was an exercise in walking through fear. Little did I know that my second exercise of walking through fear would be releasing this. I didn't realize that until it happened. And there's something really valuable about taking those steps and realizing the world's not that scary of a place and everything's kind of okay. And the next time I'm worried about stepping in front of a live audience at the Apple Store, I can get through it because I just sat with my mom's killer, so you guys really aren't all that scary. You know what I mean? And then you can calm the nerves, and knowing that it's almost like an emotional exercise. You want to get stronger, you go to the gym. You want to get through scary stuff, piecemeal it and do it. And anytime something comes to me that I'm nervous about, I instantly have to do it now.
Hi, first of all, I love you.
Thank you. Oh, you're talking to Dave.
In the movie, after you left the prison, you had a lot of emotion about wishing you did it, or if you did or didn't do it. Now that time has passed, do you regret going? Are you glad you went? What have you taken away from going?
Well, it's interesting, and thank you for the question. I love you back. I'm really happy I went, and for some of the reasons that I outlined earlier. But one of the reasons is that when we go through traumatic experiences like this, in order to protect ourselves, we shut down emotionally and lock things away. So to avoid feeling bad, I would not think about my mom's death. But then along with that came not thinking about anything before that. And I mean, I had 15 years that were great years with her. And I had locked all that away too, because if I open that door, then that's gonna lead me to this scary, terrible thing, and that's gonna hurt. So I should just shut it all out. So after having gone to San Quentin and walked through that fear, all that 15 years of memory and love and joy crept back into my soul, and I was kind of reintroduced to my own childhood in a weird way. I know that sounds really like, self-help-ish, but it's the truth. It's my experience. Kind of the Hugh Prather of the modern age. And nobody knows who Hugh Prather is. Well, that's okay. But yeah, it was it was a great experience. Thank you.
My question is, you were a young teen when your mother was murdered, and at Safe Horizon, we know all too often that there's many children who are left behind after a domestic homicide. What's your message for everyone in this room, and for everyone who's listening, for those children survivors of domestic violence? What do you want people to know about the path that they have to face afterwards?
In the film, I tried a multitude of different ways, multitude of different paths, and not all of them were great. And I think for me, I really didn't start healing until I was willing to put the shame aside and share with somebody else, whether it's a best friend, whether it's a loved one, whether it's a therapist, which highly, highly recommended, by the way. I didn't do this, by the way, just, without any kind of emotional support like that. I wouldn't recommend this to people like, I'm going to make a movie of my traumatic experience and re-trigger all my trauma. But believe me, I had support. But whether it's therapy, I think that there's a multitude of environments. One is Safe Horizon. There are 12-step groups. There are plenty of family therapists. But I would say as soon as you let go of hanging on to your secret, that's a really main thing for me, because I tried to hang on to this thing as a secret issue for many, many years. And you know that old saying, we're only as sick as our secrets. Well, all that did was harm myself. And all that did was have a negative effect on me. And it wasn't until I was willing to pull the curtain back, so to speak, that I was able to find any relief. And I think that that's an important thing to tell people that are in the wake of trauma like this. And then I would say that each person needs to find their own, because for me it's therapy, it's art, it's music, it's friendship, it's filmmaking, it's laughter. And that's the other thing I think that it's really important is don't lose your sense of humor, because if everything's this heavy, horrible, dark thing all the time, who wants to address that? Who wants to live in that? One of the most beautiful things about life is our ability to laugh and love. And if you're going to lock yourself behind this cloud of darkness because of something that you had no control over, you're only harming yourself. So keep that in mind.
Well, with that said, thank you so much to Todd and to Dave.
Thank you.
Just a reminder that Mourning Son is available on iTunes. But again, thank you to Todd, to Dave,
you.
and again to all of you for coming.
Thanks, Katie,
Appreciate
and
it.
thank you.